Chapter 6301. The pain in their hearts was constantly magnified. All the pain they had suffered over the years appeared in their minds, constantly sensing their emotions. Every crisis, the slightest carelessness could cost them their lives. Nervousness, panic, and fear were constantly magnified. Everything they had tried so hard to keep could be lost at any time. You will never know if the people you care about will lose their lives in one of the trials. Those people you once knew and hated were once high-spirited, but in the end, they still turned into eerie bones. Actually, as long as they don't go to the trials, they can live well. Is the Tao so important? Why do we have to walk the path that others have walked? You cannot be so tired. As long as you let go of all this, let go of this so-called absurd obsession, you will become relaxed. Let go of your obsession, let go of the worldly troubles of chasing, then you will be your true self. This voice was ancient and mysterious, sounding like Sanskrit in everyone's hearts. Every sentence carried a settled power, hitting everyone's hearts. An inexplicable feeling of oppression exploded in everyone's hearts, bringing with it an indescribable sadness. All the hard work was actually just your obsession, meaningless. If you were just an ordinary person, then you wouldn't have to work so hard to live an ordinary life. Humans were born to be lonely. Return to the origin and find your original happiness. Everyone was immersed in their own thoughts, and their pessimistic feelings were constantly magnified. Yes, why did they have to work so hard? Actually, they could live a simple and happy life. Come to me. Let go of all your obsession, then you can be truly happy. It was as if there was a pair of warm hands waving at them. As long as they walked forward, they could have true happiness. Come, child, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Turn back and be saved. Everyone unconsciously took a step forward, slowly walking forward. They had been really tired and hard all these years. Now, as long as they walked forward, they could stop the source of all their pain. Everyone looked forward in a daze, thinking about the definition of life. It was as if what they once firmly believed in was now meaningless. There was no power that could support them to continue. The thought of giving up quickly circled in their minds. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were empty and confused. Listening to this ancient and persuasive voice, she vaguely saw a kind of emotion struggling in her heart, as if she felt that there was something wrong with what he said. However, under the influence of pessimism, it was difficult for such emotions to emerge. Bailey Hongzhuang swayed left and right. Her footsteps paused slightly, as if she was trying to figure out what the conflicting emotions were. And the instant she came to a stop, the rising belief in her heart finally became clear. No. All these years of hard work were not in vain. Because she never gave up, because she worked hard, she found her family and gave them a better life. Perhaps if they stopped, they would be able to live a peaceful life. However, in this society where the strong preyed on the weak, no one knew when an accident would happen. Chapter 6302. Perhaps what they were doing now could not be seen for the time being, but if such a crisis really happened one day, they still had the ability to stabilize the situation. They had walked all the way with pride and arrogance. There was indeed pain and danger. The road ahead was full of thorns. No one knew if they would still be alive in this world in the next moment. But even if they did nothing, the risks still existed. They were not walking the path that others had walked, but the path that they wanted to walk. This kind of pessimistic mood should not belong to them. After this positive thought appeared in her mind, Bailey Hongmei's confused eyes showed a trace of light. That's right, she should not be in this mood. The so-called origin was just the initial appearance of being powerless. Because she did not have the strength, the former Bailey Hongmei was bullied like that when she was young. If she had the strength at that time, then so many things would not have happened later. So, why give up everything and return to her original appearance? The light in the darkness became brighter and brighter. When the pair of eyes became overflowing with light, Bailey Hongzhuang broke free from the enchantment of the demonic sound and regained her consciousness. After finding her true self, Bailey Hongmei realized that she was no longer in the appearance of a child. Instead, she had returned to her original appearance. A faint smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate face. She looked at her familiar hands, and her heart became even more resolute. There were many things that you had always ignored because when you faced them, you would fall into a very complicated mood. But when you truly faced all of this, your heart would become more determined. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that she had been baptized. Not only did her will not waver, it was even more firm and stable than before. Was this an illusion? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the scene in front of her and felt a little puzzled. It was like an illusion but also not an illusion. There was a kind of unfathomable feeling. This kind of power exceeded her previous understanding and became extremely special. Turning her head, Bailey Hongzhuang found that Bewitching had also broken free from this kind of despair. Because Bewitching had also changed from his original appearance of a child to a normal appearance. However, other than the two of them, the others were still in the state of being controlled. What the hell is going on? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes slightly and looked at the others who were slowly walking forward with confused expressions. In front of them was the azure blue sea. With everyone's current appearance as children, once they fell into it, they would definitely die. Bewitching's handsome face was solemn and cautious. He tried to wake the others up, but found that they were all immersed in their own thoughts and could not be disturbed by external forces. Such a scene was strange yet familiar to them. Not too long ago, they had also experienced such a scene. It seems that external forces are unable to awaken them. The only way is to rely on their own willpower to break free from despair. Otherwise, both of their hearts sank. They were only a few hundred meters away from the sea. Even if they were walking slowly, it wouldn't be long before they fell into it. Hongzhuang, don't worry. I believe that with everyone's perseverance, we should be able to escape. Chapter 6303. Although the situation in front of them was extremely dangerous, they had experienced all the way and gone through many tests. Their determination was far stronger than ordinary people. Even if they fell into despair and confusion at the beginning, as long as they were given a certain amount of time, they believed that they would be able to break through the shackles and understand everything. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, and her delicate jade-like face had a trace of calmness. Recalling everything that had happened earlier, a trace of inspiration flashed through her mind. Do you remember that in the strange illusion just now, the ancient voice said, "The sea of bitterness is boundless. Repent and you'll be saved?" Bewitching's eyes narrowed slightly. This is a sea. The sea of bitterness abyss. The two of them looked at each other and said this word at the same time. Previously, when they saw the location depicted on the 4 incomplete maps, they vaguely had this conjecture in their minds. The upper realm and the lower realm had 3 abysses. After asking Granny Hua and the others, they clearly understood that the Sea of Bitterness abyss was not in the celestial region. There must be a reason for the legends passed down from ancient times. The Sea of Bitterness abyss must exist, but it was gradually forgotten in the long river of history. As long as everything in front of them was connected, there was no doubt that this was most likely the Sea of Bitterness abyss. No wonder no one knew the location of the Sea of Bitterness abyss for so many years. This place is so remote, and it's so dangerous to walk here. It's normal that no one knew after a long time. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the blue sea in front of her with emotion. Even if she had not seen the true appearance of the Sea of Bitterness abyss until now, based on everything she had experienced so far, the Sea of Bitterness abyss was completely different from the other 2 abysses. Among the 3 abysses, although the inheritance of the first 2 abysses is difficult to obtain, someone has succeeded in obtaining it. Only the Sea of Bitterness abyss has not been successfully passed through so far. Bewitching's eyes, which were as deep as the sea, rippled with a complicated light. He looked around cautiously. The Sea of Bitterness abyss was really too mysterious. This mysterious power could obliterate anyone with a weak will because everyone would have some pain in their heart and things they did not want to recall. Giving up was a thought that would occasionally appear in everyone's mind. It was just that everyone usually deliberately ignored these thoughts. Nonetheless, when a mysterious power kept magnifying those thoughts, everything became terrifying. The pain that had been suppressed in the bottom of your heart was magnified infinitely. It created a beautiful and carefree environment for you. This was completely in line with human nature, because everyone thought the same thing. Not only that, this kind of power was even beyond one's imagination, because some people who had experienced pain before would find it even harder to walk out of such emotions. It was a kind of shackle, a kind of obsession that made it impossible for one to let go. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. Of all their pasts, Mo Yunjue was undoubtedly the most painful. Even if she didn't know what kind of painful experience it was, she knew that it was something he didn't want to look back on. Among everyone's expressions, Mo Yunjue seemed to be struggling the most. This was the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang had seen Mo Yunjue reveal such a pained expression. It was as if someone had stabbed his heart viciously. The pain that seeped into his bones would cause anyone to be moved. Chapter 6304. By Li Yanqi, Xiao Xuanzi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai were undoubtedly the least affected by this. They did not have any memories of the past, and ever since they recognized their master, they had been living happily. Although they had experienced all kinds of dangers, they all had good endings in the end. To them, being able to accompany their master was the happiest thing. Therefore, the so-called pain did not bring too many negative emotions to them, and happiness was not attractive to them. This was because when they opened their eyes for the first time, they saw their master. They were happiest when they were with their master, and spending the rest of their lives alone was something they were unwilling to accept. "Sister, what's going on?" Bai Li Yanqi could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang after he woke up. The feeling from before was too strange. "This should be a test of the bitter sea abyss," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. "The bitter sea abyss?" Bai Li Yanqi was slightly stunned. "Is this really the bitter sea abyss?" "Although we can't be completely sure, according to our judgment, it should be close," Bailey Hongzhuang said after some thought. Xiao Bai looked around curiously. "This is the bitter sea abyss? But there are no buildings here, and it seems to be very different from the demonic abyss." Bai Li Yanqi and Xiao Xuanzi nodded. According to their thoughts, the bitter sea abyss should also have a huge building, but it was unexpectedly empty, and there was nothing here. All along, other than knowing that the bitter sea abyss exists in the upper realm, there are almost no other records about it. Therefore, we can't get any understanding of the bitter sea abyss from other people's descriptions. Bewitching looked calm. "Since we came here by chance, it's fate. No one said that the three great abyss are similar. The bitter sea abyss has disappeared for so many years, and it shows that it's different. We do have to put aside our previous thoughts. This might be a completely different place." Bailey Hongzhuang had a serious expression. Just this method alone was something that the previous two types of chaos abyss didn't possess. Thinking about it carefully, the first two abysses targeted a cultivator's cultivation and strength, while the abyss of the sea of bitterness targeted a person's heart. The human heart was the most terrifying thing. No matter how strong a cultivator was, there was no guarantee that they could pass the test of their heart. This kind of test had almost nothing to do with strength. It was a completely different kind of test. The most important thing now is to figure out how to make everyone understand all of this. Otherwise, if this continues, once we fall into the sea, I'm afraid we'll be finished. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue and the others who were still moving forward. This situation was extremely dangerous. At this moment, another person returned to his original appearance. After Shangguan Yingning woke up, she angrily rebuked, "You want to trick me into giving up? How could this be? I've worked so hard for so long, and now you want me to give up and go back to the beginning? That would be letting myself down." Chapter 6305. Ying, you're right. Bailey Yanqi smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Speaking of which, when they were in despair, they only felt that their strength was boundless. But in reality, it was just as Ying had said. Their efforts had not been in vain. Isn't that so? Shangguan Ying looked disgusted. "At first, I was almost confused, but then I thought that something was wrong. This cultivation path was chosen by me. Although the process is difficult, I don't feel pain. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too boring to stay at home and take care of her husband and children all day long? In the future, they would live such a life. Now, they wanted to go out to experience the world and see the wonders of this world. The test of the bitter sea abyss is not a problem for Ying Ying. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. This kind of psychological test had less effect on people with simple minds. Xiren still hasn't figured it out. His will is not as strong as mine. Shangguan Ying Ying looked at Xiren with disdain, but there was a hint of worry on her proud face. In fact, she was very clear about the difficulty of this test. As long as they lost control of their hearts, they would be finished. We're not far from the sea, Xiaobai reminded. Everyone looked. They were only 100 meters away from the sea. If they didn't wake up, they would really fall into the sea. However, they had returned to their original state. Perhaps they could prevent this from happening. Everyone's hearts were beating fast. No one knew if they could break through the shackles of their hearts. Soon, Di Xiaofeng also woke up. He was still a bit afraid. This test is quite scary. Even the test of one's mind wouldn't be like this. After noticing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had passed, Di Xiaofeng sighed. I didn't expect your minds to be so firm. You saw through everything so quickly. Big brother, in fact, we also just woke up. Di Beichen smiled. This place is so strange. Di Xiaofeng looked around. I think this place might be the legendary Bitter Sea Abyss. However, after saying this, Di Xiaofeng noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were calm. Am I wrong? Big brother, our thoughts are actually the same as yours. Di Beichen nodded. We also think that this might be the Bitter Sea Abyss. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng suddenly understood. Although there are no records of the Bitter Sea Abyss in the ancient books, the scene in front of us and what we just experienced is very fitting to the name of the Bitter Sea Abyss. However, this kind of psychological barrier was often the hardest to overcome. I think the reason why no one has been able to obtain the inheritance of the Bitter Sea Abyss is because the psychological barrier is too difficult. Because no one could pass through it, and the weather here is so strange, over time, no one came here, and the news of the Bitter Sea Abyss was gradually lost. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. This kind of inner test was what everyone was most unwilling to accept. Perhaps this was also the reason why many people were in the two abyss but not the abyss of misery. Soon, Bailey Yunyan also woke up. However, when their attacks landed on the restriction, it was as if they were directly absorbed. There was no movement at all. It was as if they had not attacked at all. How could this be? Shangguan Ying Ying was astonished. This was the first time they had seen such a restriction. Bang! When Xiren did not believe it and tried again, he found that the situation was still the same as before. What a strange restriction. Everyone's hearts sank even more. If they could not break the restriction, it meant that they could only break the shackles in their hearts through themselves. However, there were only 5 meters left. If they did not wake up, it would really be over. Linge, oh wake up! Bai Li Yanche shouted anxiously. 4 meters. Chapter 6307. Linge, Yunju, wake up. No one knew if their calls would work or if she could hear them in such a state of mind. But no matter what it was, they had to give it a try. 3 meters. Linger's footsteps suddenly stopped. Under everyone's gaze, she quickly returned to her original appearance. Seeing this, everyone quietly breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, everyone called out to Mo Yunjue in unison. Perhaps this method was really effective. Yunju, wake up. Don't be misled by this voice. Everything you've done is meaningful. Everyone shouted. With a distance of 3 meters, even if they moved very slowly, they would fall to the bottom of the sea in the blink of an eye. Linger looked at her surroundings in a daze. She completely did not understand why she was suddenly standing here. When she saw Mo Yunjue gradually walking into the sea, a trace of worry appeared on her face. Linger, try and see if you can hold Yunju. Di Beichen suddenly said. Hearing this, Linger immediately reached out to grab Mo Yunjue, but found that there was a layer of invisible force blocking her movements. No, there's a restriction between me and Yunju. Linger said anxiously. 3 steps. 2 steps. 1 step. There was only a distance of 1 step left. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. A feeling of nervousness and fear spread. Along the way, they had always been a team. They had never thought that one day, someone might leave their team. This was something they could not accept at all. Yunju, knowing you has always been something we're happy about. The pain of the past is over. You still have us in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the tall but lonely figure, and there was a trace of heartache in her voice. She had always been grateful to Mo Yunjue. Whether it was the help in the past or the experience they had now, he had always done his best to help her. Let it go. As long as you continue moving forward, you will be able to forget all the pain. The ancient voice carried a boundless attraction as it circled around Mo Yunjue's mind. Ever since he was young, he had always been in pain. Even if he was the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, he would rather not have this identity. Even he himself found the life of a walking corpse laughable. What was the point of continuing such a life? If abandoning everything could relieve him of his pain, then he was willing to abandon everything. At this moment, a gentle, nervous, and pained voice entered his ears. Mo Yunjue's body suddenly trembled. That devastatingly beautiful face appeared in his mind, like a grain of sunlight that illuminated the darkness in his heart. Scenes of the past appeared in his mind. In the past, he had indeed lived a very painful life, but ever since he met Bailey Hongzhuang, many things had become less important. Even if she liked someone else, he didn't care. Because liking someone was his own business. Chapter 63:10. Indeed, it doesn't make sense, but this is the place marked on the map. Bailey Hongzhuang's sweet voice was filled with certainty. After carefully comparing the map, she gave a definite answer. Seeing this, everyone could not help but carefully observe the nearby situation. However, they really could not find anything special in such a vast sea. Could it be that too much time has passed, so the inheritance has disappeared? When Xiren voiced his suspicions, no one knew how long this map had been drawn. Perhaps someone had already been here before them. Let's go down to the bottom of the sea to take a look. Bewitching suddenly said. Hearing this, everyone was slightly stunned. They saw Bewitching's figure flashed and directly jumped into the sea. As Bewitching jumped into the sea, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. Without further delay, they quickly jumped into the sea. Usually, the seawater always had a faint fishy smell. However, the sea water here was different. It did not have any smell, just like pure water. After jumping into the sea, everyone did not see any difference and could only continue to swim deeper. However, as everyone swam down for a distance, the scene in front of them had completely shocked everyone. A huge tower sat at the bottom of the sea. It was so huge that it was like a castle. Even if it was just the top of the tower, the range was not ordinary, let alone the bottom. The entire pagoda was gray in color. Chains that were thicker than a person's body locked the entire pagoda, as if a sinner had been imprisoned here for a long time. It emitted a heavy and terrifying aura. No one thought that the real abyss of the Sea of Misery would look like this. The terrifying chains revealed an indescribable heaviness. This was a building that could not be described with words. It was spectacular beyond one's imagination. It was clearly located in the sea, but it was still brand new, as if it had not been eroded by the sea at all. Compared to it, the other two abysses were too far apart. Oh my God, there is such an existence in the world. Di Xiaofeng and the others were all shocked. They looked at such a magnificent and heavy building in disbelief. It was the same feeling that he had when he first saw the Brilliance Shrine and the Darkness Shrine. The difference was that it was a kind of worship and faith, while the one in front of him was a complete shock. Is this the real Sea of Bitterness? Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. This kind of building had a kind of power that made one's heart palpitate. To think that such a shocking building would gradually be forgotten by the people of the upper realms. This shouldn't be the case. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but sigh. He didn't know how this building was built, but its majestic grandeur was destined to be a shocking existence. That's because too many people have lost their lives here, or because there's an eternal demon in their hearts. The shackles of the heart were far more terrifying than the shackles of the body. The cultivators who failed in the other two abysses only needed to recuperate for a period of time to recover from their injuries. Even if it would delay some of his cultivation progress, it wouldn't have much of an impact. However, it was not easy for cultivators who failed in the bitter sea abyss to escape unscathed. This means that the aura of the strong will no longer be of any use to you. You will strengthen your strongest belief, and all illusions and aura suppression will no longer have any meaning. Actually, these are just means. The most important thing is that your heart will become unprecedentedly strong. The path of cultivation was long. In the early stages, one cultivated the body, and in the later stages, one cultivated the mind. As long as your hearts are unshakable, it is only a matter of time before you raise your cultivation. Chapter 63:13. Everyone fell into a state of shock. Even if they only heard about it, they couldn't help but feel their blood boiling. This kind of power was enough to make many cultivators go crazy. There's actually such a power in the world. Mo Yunjue's expression was complicated. Every experience would make them understand how insignificant they were. The inheritances of the three great abyss were very powerful, far beyond their imagination. They couldn't imagine where these powers came from, and who had such a terrifying power to imprison such a powerful bitter sea abyss. There's one more thing that you might not know. What is it? If you obtain the power of the three great abyss, these powers will fuse together to become the strongest power. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox's lips curled up in an interested arc. This happened before, and only one person had truly done it. But it was really a long time ago. We only know that it was a graceful figure, and his strength was enough to make everyone gasp in shock. Since then, no one else had done it, and the news of the three great powers fusing also came from this person. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They already had the blood aura field and the killing aura field, and vaguely felt that these two powers were similar. Now that they understood this point, they also believed that it was definitely true. So there's such a connection between the three great abyss. Xiren sighed. No wonder they're called the three great abyss. If Hongzhuang and Beichen can also obtain the inheritance of the bitter sea abyss, wouldn't that be amazing? Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. Among all of them, only Beichen and Hongzhuang had obtained the inheritance of the two great abyss. The inheritance of the third great abyss was the most difficult, and it would be very difficult to obtain the inheritance. If you can obtain it, it's naturally great. But before you try, you'd better think carefully. If you fail, you might not be able to bear the consequences. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox's gaze fell on Di Beichen. Don't forget your promise, you still have to follow me to another place. Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded. Don't worry, I'll always remember this. So, it's best if you don't go in. If you go crazy, then everything I've done will be meaningless. Looking at the serious look on the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's face, everyone finally understood the reason why he introduced so many things. In fact, after understanding all of this, everyone's hearts were beating like drums. If they didn't know, they would have definitely entered directly. However, now that they understood so much once they entered, they might also become people who lost their minds and ultimately die in the sea of misery. Why don't we give up? Bailey Yunyan's face revealed a trace of fear. Originally, she didn't think of anything, but now that she understood, she felt that this place was not just a little scary. Chapter 63:15. Could it be that because the bitter sea abyss has disappeared for so many years, even this level has become different? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little puzzled. She thought that the first level would be very difficult, but she did not expect to go directly to the second floor. However, Bailey Hongzhuang soon understood that things were not as she thought. It was just that the first floor did not have an assessment. As soon as she walked to the second floor, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the scene in front of her changed. Familiar and ferocious faces appeared in front of her. Bailey Yuyan, Xian Yuanheng, all of her former opponents had appeared in front of her. These people had been the stumbling blocks on her path, and now they had all appeared. They all look down on you and want to kill you. Now that you have become stronger, you should kill all of them. These bitches, they think of ways to bully you and humiliate you. You should kill all of them. In a world where the strong are respected, these people are just cheap lives. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the ferocious faces in front of her. In addition to some familiar faces, there were also some unfamiliar faces. Vaguely, she also remembered the faces of these people. Whether it was in Fengbo country, Tiangang sect, or even Penglai Palace, these people had mocked her and concluded that she would die miserably. A lot of messy rumors were spread by these people. If it weren't for these guys, she wouldn't have been criticized all the time. Bailey Hongzhuang, go to hell. Xiao So stabbed directly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Her ferocious and terrifying appearance showed that she wanted to kill her. You stole my man and destroyed my family. I must kill you today. Bailey Hongzhuang held the sharp sword in her hand and moved directly to meet her. There should be an end between them. Ding ding ding. Their figures moved and the two directly confronted each other. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure was as fast as lightning. Her sword rose and fell without mercy. Chi! The long sword pierced Xiao So's chest, producing a dull sound. After Xiao So's death, Han Xiling appeared in front of her again. Beichen will always be mine. You don't deserve to be with him. If I kill you, Beichen will be with me forever. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. She didn't want to say anything more to this woman. All this time, she had already given in quite a bit, but Han Xiling had always been pushing her bottom line. Since it was destined that only one of them could survive, then she could only take action. One by one, her enemies fell in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Fresh blood splattered onto her fair face. There was a faint smell of blood, but it stimulated her heart. Kill them all. Kill them all. This thought screamed madly in her heart. Every single one of them deserves to die. Unknowingly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes had turned red with bloodlust. Most importantly, he felt that once he went in, he would not be able to come out again. Everyone nodded. Yunju's life in the past was not easy. The shackles in his heart were more serious than any of them. Yunju, even if you don't enter the bitter sea abyss, your future achievements will definitely surpass others, Di Xiaofeng suddenly said. This was what he had always felt. Even if Yunju rarely spoke, he had the characteristics of a powerhouse. Chapter 63:20. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiren and the others all nodded. There was more than one path to cultivation. Sometimes, with shackles in the heart, one's steps forward would be firmer. Mo Yunjue's gaze swept across everyone's faces and then revealed a faint smile. You don't have to comfort me. I won't be disappointed because of this. He was very clear about his situation. He wouldn't take the risk to try something that was destined to fail. Looking at Mo Yunjue's indifferent and calm appearance, everyone was slightly startled and then revealed a smile. In fact, in their hearts, this wasn't comfort at all. It was their heartfelt words. The cold darkness enveloped Bailey Hongzhuang. The whole world was strangely cold, without the slightest warmth, as if it was gradually freezing her. At this moment, a struggling thought appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Scenes from when she was young appeared in her mind. Hongzhuang, it's good to study hard, but don't work too hard. Bailey Hongzhuang lovingly stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's head. Grandpa only wants you to live happily. Grandpa, is it okay if I don't study well? It's okay. Bailey Jingyu smiled. You are Grandpa's precious granddaughter. No matter what you do in the future, even if it's wrong, you have to believe that Grandpa will never blame you or be angry with Hongzhuang. That warm smile was an eternal memory in her heart. Although the old man had a childish side, he was warm and tolerant most of the time. She remembered the many days when her grandfather taught her how to grow up. He was so tolerant and warm. Even if she really did something wrong, he wouldn't blame her. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly brightened. Her family would be sad and upset, but the people who loved her would only be sad because of her death. She was wrong. She was indeed wrong. Facing up to her mistakes and finding ways to make up for it was all she could do now. If she treated death as a release, then she would be doing nothing. She wouldn't even be able to make up for it. Kacha! The scene in front of her suddenly began to shatter. Kacha kacha! The sound of breaking continued to resound, and Bailey Hongzhuang found that she had returned to the third layer of the bitter sea abyss. After seeing this familiar yet strange environment, she sat down on the ground weakly. It was too terrifying. This stage was truly too terrifying. She was so close to not being able to walk out of it forever. If she hadn't thought of that idea at the last moment, she would have been gradually frozen by the ice, and her heart would never have been able to walk out. "Master, are you all right?" Xiao He rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang's side as soon as she saw Bailey Hongzhuang come out of the illusion. Her face was filled with worry. Previously, its heart had been hanging by a thread. It had a vague feeling that its master would never be able to walk out of it. Fortunately, Master still passed this stage in the end. Looking at the teary-eyed Xiao He, Bailey Hongzhuang rubbed its little head and hugged it again. "Don't worry, it's all right now. Master, this stage is really too scary. It's only the third stage and it's already so difficult. I don't know what the next stages will be like." Chapter 63-22. Now that you mention it, I feel a lot more at ease. With Beichen's ability, even if they fail, it shouldn't be a problem for them to escape unscathed. Xiren let out a sigh of relief. Since they grew up together, he had long regarded Beichen as his own brother. His heart had always been in suspense, afraid that he would encounter any bad situation. However, he was very clear about Beichen's talent. Since someone could escape unscathed, then Beichen and the others shouldn't have any problems. Xiaofeng nodded slightly, his heavy heart quietly relaxing a bit. "I also think they'll be fine. In a month's time, I think they've at least reached the third level." Shengguan Ying smiled. "They're all working hard to improve, so we can't fall behind. Let's take advantage of this time to cultivate. Otherwise, when Beichen and the others succeed, they'll definitely surpass us by far." "That's true." Xiren nodded. Beichen and Hongzhuang's cultivation speed is really amazing. If we don't speed up, we won't even be able to keep up with them. Letting go of the nervousness and worry in their hearts, everyone began to cultivate in peace. Although they were in the deep sea, with their current cultivation, there wouldn't be any problems even if they stayed here for a long time. Not only that, this sea of bitterness contained a special kind of pure energy. Perhaps it was a mysterious energy that could see through all illusions, allowing them to be able to concentrate when cultivating. This was a very strange feeling. Normally, they wouldn't even care about it when cultivating, but after truly feeling this difference, they found that in this environment, their cultivation speed was actually faster. Bailey Hongzhuang would rest for a long time after each breakthrough. During this time, her mood fluctuated the most. After transmigrating for such a long time, she had never faced so many problems. However, every time she digested these emotions, she would find that she had improved quite a bit compared to before. This improvement also made her determined to continue to challenge the trial. She didn't know if her footsteps would stop here, but she had to try. After seeing her master's decision, Xiao He felt a little helpless, but she still supported her master's decision. All along, the reason why her master was able to stand out from so many people was mainly because of her personality and temperament. The 4th level, the 5th level, the 6th level. Every time she climbed a level, Bailey Hongzhuang felt like she had passed a disaster. She couldn't differentiate between the real environment one by one. Even in the most illogical situation, because of her own mind, everything became real. There are only 3 levels left. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the stairs in front of her. This period of time was extremely long for her, but she had finally passed the 6th level. Her heart had gone through many trials and was no longer the same as before. However, she also felt exceptionally tired, not physically tired, but mentally tired. "Master, I believe you can do it." Little Black waved its 2 little arms and said with a smile. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang bravely walked the 7th level. Chapter 63-23. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. Everything around the bitter sea abyss seemed to be still. Even the seawater did not have any waves. When Xiren and the rest would look at the black and white library every once in a while. However, there was no movement after such a long time. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. It has already been an entire year and they still haven't come out. Isn't this too long? Shangguan Yingying had a worried expression. Originally, she felt that no news was the best news. However, after waiting for so long, there was no news at all. Their hearts started to pound. It has indeed been too long. Xiren's gaze was deep. It had been so long that he started to wonder if Beichen and Bai Yunfei had really entered the bitter sea abyss. I'd better go in and take a look. Mo Yunjue looked at the entrance to the bitter sea abyss. His handsome face was filled with determination. He knew that his mental state was insufficient. It would be very dangerous if he entered. However, after entering, he would at least know what situation Hong Zhuang and the rest were in. Even if it was dangerous, it would be better than staying here and worrying. Yunjue, that won't do. Xiren quickly objected. If you want to go, I might as well go. Although he did not have much confidence, his situation should be better than Yunjue's. Just then, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice rang out. It's useless for you to be anxious. This is normal. Once you enter the bitter sea abyss, you will abandon all distracting thoughts. You will forget all your friends, family and lovers. The only thing left will be the thought of passing and giving up. Not only that, everyone will only see themselves after entering. Even if they are in the same place, they will not be able to see anyone else. Thus, even if you enter, you will not gain anything. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expressions changed. Thick astonishment appeared on their faces. The situation after entering is actually so strange? Bailey Yunyan said in disbelief. The bitter sea abyss tests the cultivator. All external influences will be eliminated. However, contracted beasts might know a thing or two, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox said after thinking. Hearing that, Bai Li Yanche and Ling Er's expressions became complicated. If they had known earlier, they would have gone in with Hong Zhuang. That way, they wouldn't have to be so anxious. Then they won't be able to come out for 3 to 5 years, right? Shangguan Yingying was secretly speechless. If it took such a long time, it would be a little terrifying. Di Xiaofeng smiled and said, for cultivators, it's not strange for them to train for 3 to 5 years. The vast majority of cultivators usually take this long when they go out for training. In fact, it should be because your training speed is usually very fast, so you forget the time that others take. That's true. Bailey Yunyan nodded slightly. Although she hadn't gone out much, she was aware of other people's situations. With such strength, 3 to 5 years was nothing out of the ordinary. Is that so? Shangguan Yingying murmured. Indeed. Think about it. Even in the entire upper realm, how many cultivators are able to reach such cultivation at such an age? Normally, the people you come in contact with are all the geniuses of the various large factions. They have cultivation resources that other cultivators can't reach. Under the accumulation of countless natural treasures, they have their current achievements. Chapter 63-24. Di Xiaofeng understood a little. This bitter sea abyss was so different, it would take a long time to pass. A year's time was actually not that long. It seems that we have no other choice but to continue waiting. Ling Er had a complicated expression. As a contract beast, she had some telepathy. She had felt the pain that went deep into her bones, just like the pain when she thought of Bai Yunjiao. She knew that Hong Zhuang must have experienced a lot of pain. It was just that these emotions disappeared later on. The only thing she could feel now was that Hong Zhuang was still alive. Other than that, she did not know anything else. If it was somewhere else, it would be enough to know that she was still alive. However, in such a place, knowing this was obviously not enough. Time passed, and all the confusion in the world lingered in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. She sat quietly in the 9th level of the bitter sea abyss. Her expression was calm with her eyes closed, like an old monk in meditation. There was no emotional fluctuation on her calm face. Time, space, everything had already dissipated in her heart. She was her, but also seemed not to be her. The world changed, everything changed, and whether it moved or not, it was all in her heart. She saw through it but did not say it out loud. There were all kinds of things in the world, and she could transcend everything in the mortal world. Her heart was unprecedentedly calm. After experiencing all kinds of disasters, looking back at the shackles in her heart, she would find that she was unwilling to let go from the beginning to the end. Suddenly, a golden light burst out, and the top of the bitter sea abyss bloomed with a strong light, illuminating the entire sea area. When Xiren and the others who were cultivating felt as if they were shrouded by a mysterious force, they immediately opened their eyes. After seeing the dazzling golden light at the top of the tower, everyone's face showed a happy smile. I knew they would succeed. Shangguan Yingying's face showed ecstasy. After so many days of nervousness, her heart finally calmed down. This kind of hurdle that is as difficult as ascending to the heavens in the eyes of others seems to be easily broken through by them. I can be considered to have seen through it. When Xiren sighed, he was clearly shaking his head, but the curve of his lips couldn't help but rise. Shangguan Yingying glanced at Xiren and said, "Come on, aren't you always so nervous that you don't know what to do?" Di Xiaofeng and the others softly chuckled. Looking at the golden light, they exclaimed, "I didn't think that someone would actually succeed." The nine-tailed inferno fox had a rueful look on its face. The reason why it had stopped Bewitching earlier was because it really didn't think well of them. The danger was too great. The slightest carelessness could turn one into a cripple. Chapter 63-26. The three types of power engulfed Bailey Hongzhuang and swept up into a terrifying storm. She was in the center of the storm. At that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if she was in the center of a whirlpool. Her body was completely out of her control, and she felt as if she was about to be torn to pieces. "Master, are you all right?" Xiao He looked nervously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a terrifying power was truly shocking. Even though it was outside the storm, it felt that this power was exceptionally terrifying, not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang, who was in the center of the storm. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had no time to answer Xiao He's question. She could only focus all her energy on dealing with these three types of power. Otherwise, once she was torn to pieces by this storm, she would probably cease to exist. Bailey Hongzhuang furrowed her brows. Her fair and delicate face was now a little pale. She gritted her teeth and held on bitterly. Every second was torture. As time slowly passed, Bailey Hongzhuang's third type of power gradually emitted a simple and peaceful aura. It was this aura that began to neutralize the evil aura of the other two types of power. Even though it was only a slight change, Bailey Hongzhuang could sense that her situation had taken a turn for the better. As the peaceful power gradually increased, the pain she had to endure also began to lessen. She faintly began to realize that perhaps this process was the process of the three great abyss inheritance merging. Because these three types of power were the powers of the three great abyss. However, the nine-tailed inferno fox had never mentioned that the merging process would be so painful. However, she was also beginning to look forward to what kind of surprise the merging of the three types of power would bring her. Xiao He was originally looking nervously at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was in the center of the storm. It was only when it saw that the storm had gradually calmed down that it felt a little more at ease. In this abyss of the sea of misery, there were strange things everywhere. Even though its master had succeeded in breaking through, it did not expect such a thing to happen. It was really worried about what would happen next. Fortunately, what Xiao He was worried about did not happen again. As the three powers gradually subsided, the golden light also completely disappeared. A smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. She had passed through so many stages in fear and trepidation. Now, she had finally completed it. "Master, is it over?" Xiao He asked. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "We've been here for a long time. Let's get out quickly. I'm sure everyone is worried about us." Ever since she entered the sea of misery, she could only sense the passage of time, but she was unable to discern how much time had passed. After going through the final trial of time, she felt as if she had walked through an entire lifetime. She felt as if she had spent an endless amount of time in the abyss of bitterness. In fact, she was a little scared now. If she had really stayed in the bitter sea abyss for a few decades, would everyone still be outside? "I can finally leave this place." Xiao He heaved a sigh of relief, a look of relief on its face. Staying in this place all day long has almost suffocated me to death. The only good thing is that my cultivation has increased. If it was on a normal day, it could play around or look for delicious food. Its cultivation would not increase as quickly as it did now. After all, in this abyss of bitterness, it could not find anything else to do other than cultivate. Chapter 63:28. Bewitching. Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and beautiful face could not hide the surprise in her heart. Her eyes were as bright as the stars and her clear voice was filled with excitement. "Wife, you've succeeded?" Bewitching's lips curled into a warm smile. Wu Shuang's face was also filled with surprise, but more than that, it was a sense of relief. He had long guessed that Hongzhuang would not give up on this opportunity. Therefore, after they had succeeded, he had been worried about this problem. In fact, when he heard Hongzhuang mention his name, he felt relieved. This meant that even if she had not succeeded, Hongzhuang had retreated safely. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "It seems that we've both succeeded. This is what it means to be a couple singing together." Bewitching's lips curled into a devilish smile. Even he was amazed by this amazing tacit understanding between them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly but did not refute. She also felt that this was too much of a coincidence. Therefore, just as Shangguan Yingying and the others were wondering who had come out, they saw two figures appear in front of the door together. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching walked side by side. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. It was as if they were a match made in heaven. "You've both come out together?" Xiren quickened his pace and quickly greeted them. "Previously, I only saw a flash of golden light. What's going on?" Not only Xiren, but everyone else was also puzzled. If both of them had succeeded, there should have been two flashes of golden light. However, only one of them had appeared. Could it be that only one of them had succeeded? Looking at everyone's puzzled expression, Bailey Hongzhuang only smiled faintly and did not speak. Bewitching asked, "Can't we both succeed at the same time? Don't joke around. How could there be such a coincidence?" Xiren rolled his eyes, his face full of disbelief. "You must have waited for the other party to succeed before coming out together, right?" Emperor Xiaofeng asked. "Then which one of you succeeded?" Everyone was very curious about this question. Although they hoped that both of them would succeed, failure was also expected. After all, so many people had failed. If one of them could succeed, it would already be very impressive. "We both succeeded," Bewitching said frankly. "Bewitching, it's meaningless for you to make such a joke at a time like this." Xiren frowned. They were really curious about this result. "I'm telling the truth." Bewitching's face was calm, but he no longer paid any attention to Xiren. His meaning was clear. It was up to him to believe it or not. Xiren and the others were confused. They could only look at Bailey Hongzhuang for help. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang faintly smiled. "Bewitching is telling the truth." "What's the truth? You both succeeded?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. The smile on her face made her even more beautiful. "That's right. But why did we only see one flash of golden light? This doesn't make sense." Emperor Xiaofeng frowned. Even he felt that this situation did not make sense. "It really is such a coincidence. When I found out, I was also very surprised." Bailey Hongzhuang faintly smiled. Let alone everyone else's reaction, even she felt that it was impossible. Chapter 63:29. I finally understand now. The two of you are really a match made in heaven. Not only did you pass such a difficult checkpoint together, you even passed the checkpoint at the same time. There is no one else who can show off their love like this. Xiren shook his head. Although he already knew that these two guys were beasts, it seemed that he still underestimated the extent of their beastliness. It was obviously a life and death experience. Everyone was worried about their situation, but the result made everyone really speechless. Following Xiren's words, Shangguan Yingying and the others also nodded. This was really what they were thinking. This dog food, they ate it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching smiled faintly and didn't say anything. They were very clear about the tacit understanding between them. Although this result also made them feel very surprised, But thinking about it carefully, it wasn't impossible. By the way, how long have we been in the Bitter Sea Abyss? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. She was very curious about this question. Bailey Yunyan replied, "We're not too sure how long we've been in there, but it should be more than a year." Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. The situation wasn't too different from what she had guessed. During this period of time, we stayed outside all day worrying. Now we can finally rest assured. Di Xiaofeng sighed faintly, but this bitter sea is really boring. There's not even a fish swimming in it. We're now done with the level. You can also end these boring days. Di Beichen smiled faintly. We've been out for so long. It's time for us to go back. Everyone nodded. 4 ordinary cultivators, more than a year of experience wasn't long. But judging from their daily experience, this time wasn't short. We can finally go back. Looking at this scenery all day is really boring. Xiren stretched lazily. His posture was lazy and casual. By the way, what's the inheritance of the Bitter Sea Abyss? Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. Is this the power that the 9-tailed Inferno Fox mentioned? That's right, this is it. Di Beichen nodded. He was a little more curious about the 9-tailed Inferno Fox. So many people did not know the specific situation of the Bitter Sea Abyss, but the 9-tailed Inferno Fox knew so much. It was indeed surprising. The inheritance of the Bitter Sea Abyss is the Heaven's Eye, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. As soon as these words came out, a trace of surprise appeared in everyone's eyes. Heaven's Eye, just hearing this name makes me feel that it's very impressive. Heaven's Eye, to see through all illusions. This name is really good. Xiren smiled brightly. If we follow you in the future, won't we be able to eat and drink well? Looking at Xiren's smug face, Shangguan Yingying rolled her eyes. Get away from me. It's embarrassing. With this power, you won't fall into the illusions set up by other experts in the future. This is really a very powerful power. I'm sure it will be very useful in the future. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with envy. Almost everyone wanted to have this ability. However, the difficulty of the level was too high. Otherwise, he would also want to go in and try. Chapter 63:31. If everything before was an illusion, then the abyss of misery is really terrifying. Di Xiaofeng looked at the unfamiliar environment in front of him in disbelief. He had never seen such a realistic environment. Even though they had this thought at the beginning, they still erased it in the end. This was because they couldn't find any flaws in the illusion. Perhaps it was because all the weather was unreasonable, so they could no longer distinguish between the reasonable and the unreasonable among the countless unreasonable weather. Even after entering the abyss of the Bitter Sea, they had never realized that all of this was fake. Since the abyss of misery can see through all fabrications, then the illusion it creates will naturally be even more terrifying. Di Beichen was not as surprised as the others. In fact, after passing all the levels in the abyss of misery, he already understood everything. Only by understanding everything could he create such a realistic and impeccable illusion. The power after the fusion of the 3 great powers is somewhat similar to the illusion we encountered before. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. In the past, when she faced the sudden change in weather, she was also helpless and anxious. Now that she understood everything, she was more in awe. Even if their cultivation was getting stronger, they still had to be in awe in the face of these powerful powers. That was because these powers had completely exceeded their understanding. As the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang fell, everyone present was startled, and then there was a deep shock and joy in their eyes. Is that true? After the fusion of the 3 powers, there's actually such a shocking power? If you really master this power, it'll be a great killing weapon. Illusionary realms were something that every cultivator yearned for and feared. They often encountered illusions, and the various powers in these illusions would cause them to fall into a predicament. It was not easy to break out of the illusion. If they also had the means to create illusions, it meant that they had another powerful means. If they directly created an illusion when facing an opponent, it would take a lot of effort for the opponent to break out of the illusion. Taking advantage of this time, they could easily get rid of a difficult opponent. The powers we have are very similar. If I'm not wrong, everything we encountered before was not an illusion. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes flickered with wisdom, and her delicate jade-like face bloomed with confidence. Hong Zhuang, what do you mean? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows in confusion. It's not an illusion. It's an existence that's one level higher than an illusion, a boundary. A boundary? Everyone chanted this strange yet familiar word in unison. The illusory realm is an illusory world created by a cultivator. It is a type of illusory technique. Everything is fake. A boundary is a small world condensed by the cultivator's own power. Every blade of grass and every tree there is created by the cultivator. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly expressed her opinion. When she was in an illusion, she would always find a way to break through it by looking at some details. Chapter 63-32. The barrier was different. Many cultivators might not be able to tell when they enter it. In addition, there's another difference. Because the barrier is built by the cultivator at will, he has the ability to control everything in the barrier. In other words, he can create the most favorable environment for himself and then deal with his opponent in this environment. Bewitching's voice slowly sounded, and his deep eyes revealed a trace of thought. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed. If they didn't understand how big the difference between the two was before, then now after the two's introduction, they knew how terrifying the barrier was. If that's the case, then the power of the barrier is really too strong. Bailey Yunyan's face was filled with emotion. Although she didn't understand it very well, just from the information she learned, it was simply a great weapon. With this ability, there would be no problem in fighting beyond one's level. Illusions are often set up long ago. It requires the cultivator to walk into the traps set up by themselves. However, the barrier doesn't need to be set up at all because it doesn't need to be induced. It's a means to deal with the cultivator. Am I right? Mo Yunjue pondered for a moment before speaking his opinion. He didn't understand this term at first. After thinking carefully, he understood the difference between the two. From this point of view, the difference between the two wasn't big at all. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. That's right, that's it. Bewitching nodded. Bai Li Yanche and the others also understood. This is really shocking. The inheritance of the three great abyss is really extraordinary. This kind of power is really enviable. At this moment, everyone also understood what the nine-tailed Inferno Fox said before. The reason why the cultivator could be so outstanding was that this ability must have helped him a lot. Beichin, Big Brother will have to rely on you in the future. Di Xiaofeng put a hand on Di Beichin's shoulder. I used to think that after you came to the upper realm as your brother, I would have to take good care of you. Now it seems that I will have to rely on you to protect me in the future. In the past, he had always thought that he was the chosen one, but now that he thought about it, Beichin and Hong Zhuang's abilities were really too strong. When facing other cultivators from the upper realm, he still had some confidence. However, when facing these two, he did not even have the thought of competing. The skeleton army and the summoning technique were almost beyond their understanding. Now, with the addition of this barrier, they had far surpassed their peers. Perhaps some people were born to be worshipped by others. If they were treated as an opponent, it would be very painful. However, if they were treated as one of their own, it would be very satisfying. Di Beichin smiled and looked at Di Xiaofeng. Big brother, we brothers have one life. Hearing this, Emperor Xiaofeng's smile gradually widened, turning into a dazzling smile. You're right. Do you plan to tell others about the secret of the Bitter Sea Abyss in the future? Shangguan Yingying suddenly said. In the past, no one knew about the existence of the Bitter Sea Abyss. Now that they had discovered it, the location of the Bitter Sea Abyss would not change. Then should they tell others about this matter? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.